Hello, and welcome back. Welcome to the Rushfield Babylon podcast, the podcast of the decline and fall of civilization. We cover both of them here on the show each week, the decline and the fall. This is a service of RushfieldBabylon.com, available all week round for your decline and fall of civilization blogging needs. And we have a great show for you today. Boy, did you pick the right week to tune in? We have some incredible guests. First off, we have an actual detective, one of the internet's great crime bloggers, author of one of the funnest blogs I enjoy reading regularly. Michelle McNamara, author of the True Crime Diary blog, is here. She's going to be talking to us about her life on the crime beat, solving actual crimes while you and me just sit here in the comfort of our homes and let murderers walk free. And then we have we have a rule. At the beginning of this podcast, I announced that this would because this is a podcast about the decline and the fall of civilization. That this is a serious podcast dealing with heady issues. That this would be a comedian-free podcast. That it would not be comedians talking to other comedians, which is the format of many a podcast, including many that I enjoy. But we deal with weighty matters. And also I'm not a comedian myself, which makes the comedians talking to comedians format near physical impossibility on this podcast. But today we have a comedian, maybe the first one that's slipped through our Booker's iron grip here. Very funny man, but he's not here in his capacity as a comedian. He's here as an author. Mr. Dave Hill, beloved by audiences on the internet and on the stage and in New York and around the world. He is the author of a new book, a memoir, and he's stopped by to tell us all about it. But what's been going on in the world before we get started with our guests? For me, it's been a lot of TV this week. I've had some important television milestones in my life. They may have been important in your life, but to me, I will always remember this. First of all, as the week that Smash ended. The Smash finale aired this week. It's been interesting. We've talked extensively about the hype backlash paradigm that seems to rule media now, whereas an upcoming show before it's aired gets bloggers and critics excited almost to death, so much so that it starts a backlash before the show airs, and before anyone even sees it. They're sick of it. Smash was something else. It was not a hype backlash. It was it started with a backlash, and then it became a reverse hype. There's that paradigm. It's the hype backlash paradigm taken through the looking glass. I actually went into Smash when it first aired with modest to high hopes that it would be a new Fame, one of my favorite movies of all time, the film Fame, and I thought that we could have a little backstage drama. I always love that. Who doesn't? Some of our favorite movies, all about Eve and whatnot. And when it seemed, and looking at it by that standard, looking at it and saying, I want a nice little Fame-like backstage drama, initially the viewers shook with disappointment at how strange and awkward and clunky it seemed, and for many of us, we just could not get past the feeling that this, what could have been such a fun backstage drama, had been let down by this bizarre show where you had a teenage son crying to his mother about, you promised to bring me a Chinese orphan sister, and people were surprised to discover that Broadway dancers were gay. The But for some of us who briefly, while we had that disappointment, somehow kept seeing it, we realized we're very strange. The human animal is the only race on Earth is the human being. Giraffes do not do this. Salmon do not do this. Only humans will say, I want a dime. I demand you give me a dime. And then when you give them $1 million, you give us $1 million, say, but I wanted a dime, and can't let go of that dime that we wanted. While we could have how many dimes does $1 million make? A lot. Like I say, salmon would take that $1 million and say, "Wow, $1 million," as would giraffes. But humans can fixate on that thing, and while we were fixated on the tawdry pleasure we were hoping for of a network backstage soap opera, we were missing the fact that we had been given the show that was the greatest gift we could ever have, which was a primetime network show, apparently directed by Ed Wood, uh, featuring the strangest things you've ever seen. It was like a psychedelic kaleidoscope right there before our eyes. And for many of us, we came to embrace this amazing world of teenagers disappointed for not getting their Chinese orphan sisters, and where tough guy mafiosa bartenders fall in love with 70-year-old producers and get their friend Randy Cobra, the aging rock star, to put all his money into a Marilyn Monroe musical. This was a fantastic, surreal world that we were taken to, worthy of Mr. Ed Wood or Salvador Dali. And next season we'll be back, but it will have a new showrunner, and the surreal may not flourish. This may be the last we have seen of our smash. And for those of us who I blogged extensively about it, and for those of us who were a part of it, it was a special moment that will never return. The other milestone for me this week was the conclusion of Survivor. It was the 24th season of Survivor. Uh, I have been gone for 23 seasons. I've sat out the last 23 seasons, and I returned for this season, mostly because I was bored of Idol, and so had a hole in my schedule, and found it as I remembered it. And I don't know why I stopped watching it, but this incredible elemental um, drama of just pure power politics. And what is always fascinating about this is when you get down to pure power politics, just how completely inept most people are at that basic thing. The woman who won, Kim, she did well. She formed, but basically all she did was she picked three or four people and said, "Let's stick together," and they did that, and then they went to win. They just stuck together. It was not worthy, not a strategy worthy of von Clausewitz, but you don't need to be a von Clausewitz apparently to win Survivor, or at least win this season. People tell me other seasons are different. Um, what's so fascinating is how many people on Survivor and in the world really do seem to be playing for second or third place. That just seem to have no, even though they're on this show and it's a contest and there's only one winner, seem to have little interest in winning or trying to win. And when they had chances to break through and they could win or do something, just didn't really want to do that. Even though they were on this island, they didn't have a day job or anything while on the island. Winning the game is that's their whole life. But when they had these chances to put themselves in the driver's seat, they just say, well, let's just take it easy. Let's not get carried away here. Uh, and there were only of the people, the 20 some people who are on the show, only really a small handful who seemed to even want to win. Of those, only a couple seem to have any common sense enough to get themselves there. But it's an interesting thing in life, and if you're playing hard for second or third place, sometimes you can get lucky and get there. It is what it seems. But fascinating thing. Good to be back on Survivor. I'm told this was I found it fascinating. I'm told it was a pretty boring season actually. The last few weeks certainly were, and I'm looking forward to a more interesting show. So that's my week. Uh, we've got we've got a great show for you here today. A little note: the interview with Dave Hill is the audio quality is not what you would want it to be. I think we could say. It's we spoke. The Skype wasn't doing was Skype was behaving very badly for us, so we switched over to an old-fashioned cell phone, and it wasn't great either. You'll see it, you'll hear it dropping out, but the the clarity, the humor, the wit, the gentility of Mr. Dave Hill are such that they will shine through and win you over despite maybe spotty audio level. Let it take you back. Don't No one actually uses cell phones anymore. They're just texting machines. So let it take you back to a simple time when you would pick up your iPhone and you would dial a number, and on the other end would come a voice, the voice of a friend, of a colleague, a lover, a husband or child, and you would hear their voice and they would hear yours, and you would share with each other, and then a few times the call would drop out and you'd have to dial them back, but your love would continue unbroken, as it will for Mr. Dave Hill when you hear that. But first up, Michelle McNamara of the True Crime blog, and a fantastic chat we had, and hope you'll enjoy it. Well, this is very, very exciting to have our next guest. Our next guest is someone who really changes the world in ways that we all wish we could. We all, I think there's no one in society right now that does not think of themselves as a master detective. I certainly consider myself foremost as that I put that at the top of my resume, that I am a master detective, even though I've never actually solved any crimes. That doesn't interfere with that vision of myself. But the person, my guest today, actually is a master detective and has a blog to prove it. I speak, of course, of the author of the True Crime Diary online, Michelle McNamara. Welcome to our show.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now tell us about your blog. Tell us about true crime. Tell us how you got into crime.
Well, the crime business. I got into it. I didn't have a straight sort of direction into it. What happened was when I was a kid, I grew up outside Chicago. When I was a kid, I grew up in this kind of nice suburb, and when I was 14, a family friend was murdered kind of a couple blocks from our house.
Oh.
And it was, it was very gripping at the time, and everyone was very upset, but then they kind of moved on. And what I noticed is that I just was not able to move on. I became very obsessed with this case, and it never really left me. And so
Was the killer caught there? Or?
No, the killer has never been caught, and I actually just wrote about it recently too. And I don't think so much that it was a suburb of Chicago. I'm not so sure that they were really, that they could deal with a homicide like that. But it was very mysterious and very strange. So then from then on, I always followed crime stories. But it never occurred to me to go into law enforcement or anything like that. I was always a writer, so I just kind of always followed crime stories. And then in the last, probably 7 or 8 years, what happened was as technology changed and more information went online, what I found was that I was kind of beating some of the news, like your Nancy Graces, to I would yell out the name of a suspect right before they would, because I was kind of doing it online. And my husband was the one who said, you should do a blog about this. So that's kind of how it just kind of took over from there.
So your blog's been up for the 7 years now?
No, not for 7 years. It's probably been 4 years.
4
4 years.
years.
Hmm.
How and you reading it, you will find a fascinating array of great crimes going on out there, and Michelle always brings really interesting insight to all of them and looking at them. But tell us how do you find your crimes? How do you?
Well, I have a soft spot definitely for the crimes that aren't getting as much attention as so it's sort of your shaggy dog under the radar stories that I like. So I find them a couple different ways. You know, once the blog got going, people would kind of send me tips. You know, this happened. Can you look into it? But what I like to do is find stories where I describe it to people like having sports statistics in your head. Because I read so much about crime, I have all these facts in my head. So when I read about a crime, it may seem to me like, oh, that might be the same guy that did that in Missouri in 1986. So I like to sort of find things that could be connected, that could have the same guy, or if there's enough clues that, you know, kind of data mine it is a possibility. So I like to do that.
What's a recent crime you found that give us an example of
Well,
one that?
so for example, one of the ones that I sort of that was the first kind of thing that got me a little bit of attention was this kid had been abducted from a bus stop in the Midwest, and they were, you know, looking for him. And I said I thought it seemed a lot like this other case that no one had ever
Hmm.
talked about. It was like 200 miles in the opposite direction. But there was just things about it. It was, for a variety of reasons, it seemed similar to me. So I wrote,
What were some of the
well, like
similarities?
they were the exact. It was equidistant from St. Louis. They were in different directions, but they were both kind of the same kind of towns, rural areas. They were both kind of right at the same time of day, so right after school. The kids kind of looked alike. They were around the same age. But this first one, Sean Hornbeck, no one really ever. I don't know why. It just, you know, another thing that fascinates me is kind of why certain crime stories get attention and why others don't. This first one didn't at all, but he was in my head. So when Ben Ownby, the second kid, was abducted from the bus stop, I wrote this post that I said, I think it's possible that the same guy may have taken these two kids. And the next day, they got a tip where Ben might be, and this became a big
Hmm.
national story. So, but they basically went to find him, and Sean Hornbeck, the kid I said may have been taken by the same guy, opened the door. So that was like weird because
Oh.
it was sort of, I had predicted that kind of thing, and then I ended up predicting that guy was responsible for a third thing, and he is the top suspect in that one too.
So do you ever communicate with the police about these
Well,
things
now
too?
because I'm doing like more kind of just old school reporting, I do call them a lot. And when I do interviews and stuff, I mean, I'm not like calling in tips all the time. I just write my own stuff. But I have had, you know, I have a lot of relationships with, on certain unsolved cases that seem to bug certain cops.
Hmm.
They seem to have I stay in touch with them about it
Yep.
because, it makes sense. It's like for them, this is one of 1,000 cases they have to do, whereas it's a bigger deal to me. So
But in yeah, in the movie version, you if you would call up and say, listen, I see this similarity, and they would say, listen, lady, we put that case to bed 20 years ago. There's a guy sitting in jail. He had the gloves on him.
right,
Case closed. Go get a hobby.
right. Well,
Is
I think the thing that stuns me the most is, and I think this is a generational thing, and I think it is changing. Is the police are not utilizing the internet at all. I mean, in shocking ways. I mean, you will tell them that the victim had a blog in which they detail their uneasiness with their piano teacher, and they have no idea what you're talking about. You
and
know,
is that literally
that was literally one case, yes, where this girl went missing, and it was like she had a whole blog where she spoke sort of very clearly about some things that were going on, and they just, I think they're just very tied to their old ways of doing
so
things. I
they
think that's changing, but
so they hadn't Googled the victim?
no, they hadn't Googled the victim. They didn't, I don't think they're realizing how much people live their lives online now. And not only that, so there's so much you can mine there. But also just, I mean, I have databases, it's just like reporting, but it's like I have databases with the kind of vehicles people had in 1967, so you can find out a lot about, if you suspect someone, you can find out a lot about what they're.
Tell me about these databases. What sort of databases do you put together?
Well, because I actually apprenticed with this PI in Beverly Hills named Robert Mann, a Worldwide Intelligence. He was a great guy.
Well,
He actually sort of turned me on to all these different databases that are really helpful. One that I use a lot is publicdata.com. You have to have I think you pay for it monthly, but it's cheap. But I mean, it's all like arrest records, any civil court records, anything like that. So you can put in and it goes back a fair amount. I think it goes back to the mid 60s. So you can find out a lot, and you can find registration stuff, property ownership.
so you can search for all the Broncos used in getaways
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can look up, or even just, I mean, Google. Like, what I think people do. People don't understand how great Google is. Like, for instance, I was telling you a little bit about this Jane Doe that I'm helping this ex-detective on. So this Jane Doe was found off Mulholland Drive in November 1969. Beautiful girl, never identified. It's kind of haunting this detective. So we're kind of trying to write something about it together, do something about it together. But the thing is, like, so his whole thing is, someone's got to be, they're in their 60s now. She probably had siblings, a family. Maybe people are looking for their daughter. But there's, you can Google everything from, my sister that I last talked to in 1960. You have to just enter a million different variations. And oftentimes something will come up, it's weird. So.
and what's fascinating, I mean, we always just assume, oh, the authorities have anything you can think of. The authorities have already done it, but you're saying when it comes to this basic to this kind of research that can be done on the internet, they're not doing it.
They're not doing it. I mean, I have been frankly shocked at how little they're doing. I don't know if it's a resources thing, that they don't have the resources or what, but it's very strange to me that they don't. I think more and more they're going to have to, but they're just not right now.
No, and I think you're quite right that when you look at anybody's life here, especially if it's a person, say under 35, a good percentage of that life is lived online, and their relationships and where they go and all these. So if someone like yourself is very savvy about using the internet and how to search and where to search and these databases, that there's a lot of there's a lot. I mean, you can solve a case better online than they can by knocking on the doors and saying, "Have you seen anything suspicious in the neighborhood?"
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. And even like, well, the old sort of "have you seen anything suspicious in the neighborhood?" I'm obsessed with this, is now, comments under a news story. I'm fascinated with those because a local news story, you go to the comments, and a lot of times it's like standing at the town square listening to a bunch of people walk by and say, well, I heard this and I heard that. And yeah, like 90% of it's going to be crap, but there's going to be a nugget of truth probably in there somewhere, and then you can chase it down, So it's just really interesting to me.
Do you ever feel, reading the comments on a story, that you read a comment and you say, that is the killer? The killer left that comment.
No, I've had some online interactions that I would definitely characterize as creepy, but I've never.
Can you tell me about those?
Well, yeah, there was. There is this the case that is sort of the biggest case that I'm most obsessed with is the short version is basically he's the worst serial offender kind of in a modern history that no one really knows about. He killed people in California. He raped over 50 women in California and killed 10 people.
Wow.
And he's never been caught.
In what time period?
He started in 76. He ended in 86. But he made obscene phone calls to his victims, and there was a phone call as late as, let's just say, I'm not supposed to say it, so let's just say much later. Uh-huh. So he's probably still alive. And he left behind all these, like, very specific, strange clues that now, with all these resources, you can literally go, well, like, what white men who were born from, like, 50 to 56, lived in Rancho Cordova, Goleta, and Irvine at these times, and may have and owned a white German Shepherd. I mean, you really can so that's what this group of people is doing. We're trying to kind of. So, anyways, in this case, there's a guy that had a name, and I won't say it, but he had a name that seemed perfectly normal, and I was writing back and forth with him, and then when I kept looking at the name, I realized it was an anagram that said, "I am not."
Really?
Yes. And so I wrote him and I said, "Is this an anagram for I am not the whatever?" And he never wrote me again. And so that creeped in a major way.
Now, do you test all your names for anagrams, or how did that? How did you?
I just because the more it sounded like a normal name, but I was just looking at it. I mean, the thing is, the serial killer is known as the East Area Rapist Original Night Stalker. So people it's EARONS. So everyone refers to him as Earons. And this guy's name, it just struck me while I was looking at it. Oh my God, that says I am not Earons. And yeah, no, I don't. I usually try to, if I'm going to talk to someone, I usually do a little digging. But this guy just seemed totally normal and polite, and I never.
Well, exactly. That's who the killer is. The totally normal, polite guy.
I had someone else tell me that they thought that they.
I'm sorry, Michelle.
Yeah.
Oh, could you repeat that? Your sound.
Oh, yes. I was just going to say I had someone else who is obsessed with the case also had dealings with him, and they said that they looked into him and they just think he's kind of a weirdo, but that it's not the killer.
Huh? Did you turn this over to the police, or?
No, because he didn't do anything overtly creepy. You know, I don't know. It left me feeling very weird, but he didn't do anything. He didn't threaten me or anything, so I didn't say anything about it.
So you say there's other people. How did you all get together online, or how did you find each other?
Well, someone started a message board about it on because there hasn't been that much attention to it, but I think A&E may have done a cold case files about it, and so they started a message board, and this message board, this community just got very tight and very intense, and I mean it involves some victims' family members are on there, some retired detectives are on there, and it just the people on there are just doing really amazing work in terms of really finding out information, and they're quirky people, but they're really using amazing skills it. And they've gotten some good suspects who are actually tested now for DNA and stuff. So it's the case is actually moving forward. It's really fascinating.
So do you feel like we're going to get this guy?
I hope so. It's the one that I just think about constantly because he was a particularly terrible. I mean, he was just all about terrorizing people, but he was also had to be sort of a middle class or upper middle class guy because he never really stood out in these neighborhoods or anything, and he just and I think that he left behind. He was very clever, but I think he left behind enough clues that I'm confident that they have his DNA. So if they just need someone to match it to.
Well, why can't we just test everybody then and see which one of us is it?
Well, it's funny because I'm a pretty sort of ACLU liberal kind of person, but when it comes to DNA, I'm like, we should all be swabbed at birth and just put it in a bank somewhere.
Or how about we just they just swab us just to see if we're him, and then they throw it all away.
Well,
is that fair?
I think that's fair. Yes.
I'll tell you, I have never solved a crime. But I have solved a mystery. I of course referred to the case of Lonely Girl 16.
Oh yes.
Which in my days at the LA Times, I brought her to justice. I revealed that it was not a real teenage girl, but
I mean, when you were in the thick of sleuthing, isn't that just an amazing adrenaline thing?
It could only describe it like the craziest drug binge I've ever been on.
Just imagine that I feel like that every day.
I envy you and fear for you because I mean the thing is there's so much information and there's so many paths out there on the internet that you're going down it and you feel like you get closer and you feel like if I can just unlock this defunct MySpace account, that in
Right.
there is the name of that you feel like you're just like you feel like you've got all this information in front of you, and somewhere in there is the answer,
Yeah.
and that for us, I mean, for this was about it was about 2 months, and I was up until about 4 or 5 every single morning while working a job, just like binging on like trying to, but it's a
I totally get it. I totally get it. Yeah, there's been times when I have not left the house for like 2 days. I read this. There was this sort of famous experiment where they learned that it's like rats prefer to search for their own food than be given food, and
really.
I totally get that because I just get that how searching is like a cocaine high. You know, there's just something about it.
And for you, I mean, I was doing this just trying to find out if a girl was actually really making tapes of her teenage life, or whether it was just a joke. This is there's a criminal, there's a murderer on the loose. So
Right.
how do you let that go? How do you step away from that ever?
I don't know. I mean, I think that you just have to sometimes. I would say the other thing I try to stay away from is there, like linkage blindness or whatever they call it. Even with this Jane Doe, there's a point where I'm like, I can't blame every murder in the fall of 1969
Mm-hmm.
on Charles Manson. You kind of want to, but you kind of go, there's a point where it's like there's connections everywhere and you have to just stop and go, a knife is actually, Michelle, a very common weapon.
Yeah.
Not, so that's something that I kind of try to stay away from. And I do find that it's when I've stayed up too late and haven't had sleep, and I'm obsessed with something that I tend to start jumping the gun a bit. But
That's when you gotta when you're playing poker, when you realize you're about to bet all your money on a losing hand, you got to make yourself step away from the table to
oh right.
get your instincts back. But do you you did an interesting post about that, uh, about how these things that seem like incredible coincidences, when you look at them statistically, uh, in fact they're
Oh
that they
yeah.
happen all the time.
Right. And then yeah, people just read yeah, especially when you're just dealing with like I think that the quote that I kind of loved was like, people kind of go like, what are the odds, 1 in a million. Well, we live, we're a country of 240 million people. That means 240 times a day, a 1 in a million thing happens. So
Wow.
it's not when you're working with such a large number as just the world, the odds are actually pretty good that things are going to be similar sometimes. So,
That's a very good way of putting it. Yeah, I recall I recall hearing Penn Jillette tell the story of uh, in New Jersey they had one man won the lottery for the second time,
right.
a huge lottery, and they investigated that he must have been fixing it, like that one man had won like multi-million-dollar prizes, and when they investigated it and they looked at it, the lottery company said, well, it was overdue. It was
Mhm.
eventually the same person was going to win a second lottery, even though it's 1 in 8 million, that it was time for 1 in 8 million to happen.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
The another thing, though, if I can refer again to my experience in the Lonely Girl 16 case,
Hmm.
the one thing that happened there that makes me very wary on the internet was we had there was a big society of amateur Lonely Girl 16 sleuths, um, that were meeting and conferring on message boards and things,
Hmm.
and they were analyzing the data. And I recall, for instance, there was one video where she was walking outside, and you had botanists out there. You had botanists like talking about the flora and fauna, and showed that like a flower that was in the background could only be found in eastern Oregon or something. And then
Right.
you had lighting people from Hollywood showing how this could only be a professional lighting setup. And they drew these very complex diagrams explaining how this was very complicated lighting and everything. And when Lonely Girl was finally revealed, when we brought
Hmm.
her in from the cold, I asked her about the trail in Oregon that they've been hiking on,
Mhm.
And she said, "Well, that was in Griffith Park, actually. And it was a trail that I'd been on several times in my life." And then when the team was asked about their professional lighting setup, they said, "Well, we had a desk lamp that we turned on sometimes, and
Right.
sometimes we opened the window." So at there's a danger in crowdsourcing of believing, taking the word of experts, that
Right.
things seem proven because someone says they're an expert, and thus you take their word. How do you watch out for that?
Well, I mean, it's interesting that you say that because, again, to talk about this Jane Doe case, I was just talking to the detective, and she had all these fillings in her mouth, and so he wanted to see if they were for a couple of reasons. He thought she might be Canadian, so he checked with Canada, he checked with the American dentist, and then he checked with military dentists, and he said, and I've got three different explanations or conclusions. And so I think even the problem is everywhere. Yes, it's probably going to be worse with amateurs, but I do think that that's a problem everywhere. I mean, I think it's like anything, you kind of just have to weigh the totality of something. So I tend not to get like too wrapped up in one aspect. Like this Iran's case has so many different facets to it. That I just, when I'm looking at someone and thinking maybe they're good for it, like I try not to just hone in on just one of them because you just want to look at the bigger picture. But yeah, I agree that it can be tough. And people, it's like confirmation bias. They probably wanted to read more into it than they did.
Now, when you find Iran, as I know you're going to,
Hmm.
are you going to get a posse together and bring him in, or are you going to just turn it over to the police and let them handle it?
Well, there are a couple of detectives that are. This is like I mean, one of them had built a shrine to this case, and then like their supervisors asked them to take it down. I think four of them all have like huge boxes that they sift through at night. So I mean, people have been way obsessed with this way longer than I have. So if I ever had someone that I just was 100%, well, put it this way, I'm not above hiring someone to go dig through someone's trash and test it for DNA.
Hmm.
I've thought about that. And the guy that the Midwestern state that this guy is currently living in, I've thought about that. But I would always defer in the end. I don't want to. I'm not like a brave. I don't want to ever take law into my own hands. I much prefer to sit with my computer in my house at night.
But the glory of marching into the police station with this guy, I picture him tied up with a rope, and you're leading him in, and you've got two of your deputies on either side with shotguns, and saying, "Sergeant, please book the Iran killer."
Yes, no,
That
that would be glory. There would be a lot of glory, but frankly, what I'd rather do is say, could I have 10 minutes with him alone in a room so I could ask him some questions? Because there are things about this case that just I'm so like question so much, like how did that happen? And so yeah, I mean, I just I hope some people are like, oh, what if he's dead? And I really don't want him to be dead because I want to know the answers. So
So, Michelle, people can follow your work at truecrimediary.com.
correct.
How can they get involved in solving this case?
They can absolutely. I have an email address on the website, and if people ever have anything, I'm always open to read. I love getting story ideas, or Often people will say, "Oh, when I grew up in this Grand Rapids, there was this weird crime." Like, I love to hear about that because I'm always looking for more ideas. So, yeah, just they can email me.
This is well. It's fascinating to read it and follow it. I'm very jealous that you are a real detective, and I'm only an entertainment detective. Uh, so sometimes I may have to do an apprenticeship with you there.
Right.
To,
Well, I
to
think, I mean, like, we all know that crime and entertainment overlap way too much. So possibly there'll be some juicy story that we.
a good percentage of, I mean, the night should come when I should get my deputies and show up at some studio heads houses, and bring them and wrap them in rope and say, bring them to the station and say, please book Mr. Diller and Mr. Iger for crimes against the people. But
Yes, yeah.
but meanwhile their crimes are still considered legal in our society. So what can I do? But your work is fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us, Michelle. When you catch your next killer, we're gonna have you back here, and you're gonna tell the full tale.
Okay, I definitely will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. One. I am very pleased to have with us our next guest today. Our next guest and our first guest. He is I have been a fan of his work since I saw him since I was secretly in his audience. Not secretly, only a secret to him because I haven't mentioned it at the Aspen Comedy Festival some years ago. How many years ago was that?
Oh, wow.
20,
That was
25 years ago?
20,
Mid
yeah, 25 years ago.
the
I think it was 5 years ago.
5 years ago at the Aspen Comedy Festival.
2007.
The
Yeah.
day I became a fan of Dave Hill, who was performing there, he did his talk show, and the hardest thing I've written a lot about comedy in my time, but I try not to because it's very hard to describe in a way without making it sound boring or anything that's unique is almost indescribable. And Dave Hill is incredibly unique. I don't know one uh, who exactly like him, and he is also, even more importantly than being a comedian, a host of a talk show, he is an author of a new
Yeah.
memoir entitled "Tasteful Nudes and Other Misguided Attempts at Personal Growth and Validation," out next week from St. Martin's Press. Welcome, David Hill.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And thanks for all those nice things you just said.
I mean,
I was going to interrupt you, but I didn't want to. I was enjoying it too much.
never interrupt praise of yourself. No, I mean it's a hilariously funny book. I am a fellow memoirist. Mine is a unfunny memoir, but
No, I enjoyed it. I read it. I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Well,
your sister gave it to me. I don't know if I told you that.
You did not. You did not. But that was very wise of her to give you my memoir.
I put it on. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads.
Look
you
at
didn't
you.
see that?
Look at you.
Yeah.
You know, I try not to look at the page for that book because the memoir is about my college years, and it seems, and it's mostly filled with people who hated me in college, writing reviews about how I'm still the memoir proves that I'm still a jerk. So.
Oh wow! People just won't let go.
I wrote a whole memoir about it, so who can blame them? But the war goes on.
Wow.
And
sounds like they had it coming though.
I had it coming, which is the point of my thing. But I had it coming because I had no choice. They drove me to be the jerk that I was. And that is the business of my memoir. You, in your memoir, you are not a jerk exactly, but you are you are a character, and what I've been getting at here is that the Dave Hill experience is incredibly idiosyncratic, and in my review on the blog, I said that your memoir sort of it doesn't create a narrative necessarily of how one became Dave Hill, but it is a pointillist portrait, and you assemble these points, and you begin to get this image of how this very unique character comes out. So to start off, tell us, what is Dave Hill?
What is Dave?
Not who is, but what is Dave Hill?
What is Dave Hill? Dave Hill is a sad man. No, I'm just some guy, you know.
Wait, you probably sit down with journalists probably every day.
constantly.
who say to you, how do you describe your act?
Yeah, my nightclub act.
Yes,
Or my whatever act.
Your bit.
Writing act. Yeah, my bit. Yeah, I don't know. I guess.
I described you as sort of as if you put Steve Buscemi in the court of Louis the 14th or Louis the 15th.
Oh, I read
Louis
that.
the 15th. Or
I love that.
That's as close as I can. You're an elision between sort of very effete and sophisticated, and also very very dirty.
Yeah, a complete low-life moron.
Yeah,
that's about it, right. Yeah, I'm a Gemini. No, I don't necessarily follow it, but yeah, it's a bit of both.
And so in writing this book, was it your conscious goal to describe how your personality, your perspective developed, or how did you approach putting together these stories?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. I mean, it's interesting that you say that because I've heard other people say that it's sort of like it sort of explains why I am the way I am now.
We're all looking for an answer.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, wow. I mean, that's sort of the thing. It's like, with the book, I just wanted to, I was just trying to hit the word count, honestly. Just trying to reach my contractually obligated word count.
God. How many words was that?
Give me the money.
40,000?
It had to be, no. It was, I think the contract was for 60 to 80,000.
Holy mackerel.
Ended up being like almost 80, but to me that sounded like 80,000 words. That's like the Old Testament or something, But no, I'm kidding about the word count. Even though it's true, when I did start writing the book, I was like, holy shit, I'm gonna really have to just. And I was going off on all these tangents because I thought 80,000. I thought it was like War and Peace or something. But
when you're staring at an empty page and somehow you got to put 80,000 words onto it, that's and it has to be turned in on one page, of course. Then that feels like writing war. You're like you got to write War and Peace ahead of you.
Yeah, and when you sit there for like 5 hours and then you only get like 150 words or whatever. What's that?
Did you have one story that started you out, or one moment that made you think this is sort of what the book will be, or that it grew out from? The germ, as they say?
I think the story about the homeless shelter, when I'm working at the homeless shelter, and the guy that steals 300 pounds of meat right out from under my nose. I think that was sort of that was the one that started it all.
That captures a lot, actually, that story, because it shows it's kind of a very very gritty urban setting. It kind of shows the naivete of Dayville. You in the story you give the guy the keys to help him steal the meat from a homeless shelter, thinking you're being helpful. And
I find out that everyone is a recovering crack addict except for me. So I thought I was so good at my job that I got promoted, but I was really just promoted because there was no danger of me smoking crack on the job. But yeah, I think that started that was This American Life piece I did, and then I adapted it into an essay, and then. But yeah, I think that was sort of the one that sort of was the jumping off point or whatever. It has a bit of everything, hints of the glamour ahead of me, because I had rocker hair at the time in that story, and I was like trying to get my first rock band off the ground or whatever while I was rubbing scabies lotion on, guy's acid. So
that it was
the full range.
My favorite, actually, of all of them, and it could just be because of the era I'm from. Was when you took your mother conned you into taking her favorite priest on a night out to a combination sort of church reunion and Elizabeth McGovern concert. That at the
Yeah,
end,
Maureen McGovern.
that Maureen McGovern, sorry, Elizabeth McGovern. The That in the end you discover the priest was dreading the night as much as you were.
Yeah.
That's a I probably would like any story that deals with the Maureen McGovern concert, but
Well, yeah, that's, you can't. That's instant
but
electricity right there.
that was a fabulous. Was that a story? Have you told that story on stage, or have you worked with that material before?
Yeah, I've never told that story on stage, but that was also This American Life piece. That and the homeless shelter were both started as This American Life pieces, and then the rest of the book is mostly just stuff. And there's a few things that were adapted from storytelling on stage and stuff, but most of it's just me locked in my apartment writing the book.
How was it different telling one of these stories on the page than working the material out on stage?
It took me a while because I think I got out of the habit because I started as a journalist, so I learned how to write proper, in a way that was like reporting and proper grammar and things like that. And from doing comedy, my voice became more my own and just the way I speak. And it's gotten the way I realized it had been a long time that I had, since I had written anything sincerely, it was just always from more of this retarded persona, for lack of a better description. Yeah. So I kind of had to read. It took me a while to read to get back to finding sort of middle ground. I sort of like he had a similar experience because he had written a critique for his current book, which is current book is more of a memoir, and he said he did the same thing. He had, you realize how easy it is to sit down and be completely silly, and when you are I'm actually telling a real relating, my actual experiences. I had to figure it out, and part of it, when I was oh man, I'm writing a book, I'm just a grown up thing, and so it was really stiff at first, and the publisher was they're we've read all this other stuff and we've seen you perform, do this, you seem like you're reining it in a bit. They're just go crazy, don't hold back. So that went way, way too far in the other direction, where the book became this complete stream of conscious, just rambling. Then I kind of hit middle ground.
If you just take a version, if you were just take your telling on one of these stories that you do on stage at one of your New York nightclubs that you frequent,
sure.
And you transcribe that, does it read anything like a chapter that's usable in a book?
It's similar, I can't do it exactly. I mean, some of the things like the Big in Japan essay about my current band Valley Lodge's tour of Japan, that started as, that was a live storytelling show I did at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And so when I started the essay, I basically took, basically a transcription of the live show and worked off of that. And then it didn't work. It didn't fit with the rest of the book. And then, I was almost going to cut it because it's just what, the voice it was obviously the same voice, but it was just the language and things. So I just kind of had to start from scratch, which which was good because then it was sort of fun again. It wasn't me just like banging out this thing that I had already been doing for a year. But yeah, it was just there's less profanity in the book maybe than I use on stage. Not that I'm a proponent of profanity, but I like it to just underscore stupidity, my own stupidity. And I had to remove all profanity. Any chapter that my mom would have talked about, my parents were discussed at all. I took any profanity out of that, and really, it's hard to do because some words, I wanted to use, but basically because my dad's going to show this to his friends at church or something, so I should make it like presentable for that setting. There was that.
Were there stories that you wanted to use but you couldn't because of because it involves other people that you just there was no way to mask them or hide it?
Not too much. I mean, the only one in the whole book, I think I'm the only one in the whole book who looks like an idiot, really. I think I'm say one mean thing about one person in the whole book, and I don't say their name or anything, but I refer to it's like the sort of thing where if she read it, she would know I was talking about her. But I think the only thing that I was nervous about, and I'm still a little nervous about, is the chapter, the title chapter, the Tasteful Nudes one about meeting the prostitute escort for lunch, accidental lunch date with a prostitute, because she is still a fan and a friend. I mean,
you're still in touch with her?
Yeah, we don't keep close contact, but it's sort of a nice epilogue. I actually had lunch with her again recently because she got in touch with me, and was, we were talking, and she's like, hey, I started a business, like a legitimate business that has nothing to do with,
a business not a business that's not having selling sex for money.
Right, has nothing to do with that. So, and she told me, and I was like, oh wow, that's great. And she was like, oh, I thought you'd be more excited, how you'd be really proud of me. And I was like, yeah, I am. Like, I think I was just holding back because I didn't want to be like, oh my God, that's so great. Because I felt like it would be like kind of retroactive judgment on her prostitution. Like, I didn't want to be like, oh, so
thank God you've stopped that life.
Yeah, I didn't want to make her feel bad about it. So I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, as if she was like, I was paralegal, and now I'm in pharmaceutical sales. I kind of reacted that way. Like, oh, well, that's cool. Yeah. But, it was genuinely like, oh, that's awesome. Because,
it's like when someone breaks up with someone that you secretly always hated. You can't act too happy about the breakup for them. You have to say that's sad.
Yeah, exactly. It's just got to be kind of like, oh wow, that's too bad. I guess I won't see him ever again. Yeah, I've said that's the only one. Like, I'm nervous if she reads that. I don't think she would be mad or anything, and she's totally anonymous in the story. But
tell me though, when you go through life and your life you consume you have a furnace going between your memoirs, between your This American Life, between your writings and your stage performance. You got a furnace that needs fuel of new stories and experiences. Constantly needs to be fed. Do you find yourself looking for stupid situations to get into, and then behaving stupidly when you get into them, in search of new material to feed this furnace?
Not too much. I mean, occasionally I don't think I do stuff to say in hopes that something worth talking about happens, but I think I do things just because. I mean, because it's why I like doing like a variety of things. It's just it's just fun and interesting. So like, say for example, well, even like this isn't in the book, but I don't know if you've ever seen like the Black Metal Dialogue Switch Team thing I did. Basically like me emailing with this Norwegian black metal record label. Like I did this like 8 years ago or something, and it was just me pretending to be this teenager from Indiana trying to get signed to this Norwegian black metal label, and it was just my own entertainment. I didn't really think it would be of any entertainment, but then showed it to some friends. And it was because it was like before black metal had like sort of a pop culture recognition or whatever, and and then it ended up being like there was a website and people like really into it. But I think I'm kind of into entertaining myself and just like I'm just a moron. I mean, perennial 15-year-old. Like, things. In the book I talk about going to things and doing a comedy show like that. That started out just as a stupid, drunken conversation, and then I decided to go through with it just because I thought, that would be interesting. And how else am I going to end up in prison? That's not, there's only one other way, really. Or, I guess I could get a job as a corrections officer, whatever. But yeah, I think I just like speak out things that are interesting, fun and interesting to do, and then I like to use comedy or music as like sort of a way to sort of my entree into whatever situation. So sometimes like I'm really bad at like taking vacations, like just going somewhere for the hell of it, so I'll just set up shows somewhere as an excuse for winding up in Austria. And then when I get to Austria, then I'll try to get into some trouble. But I don't know. I'm going to try to do, like with this book, I'm going to do, some readings, and I'm going to do my conventional things. But then I'm going to do, I think, a reading of Rikers on Rikers Island or whatever.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, so, and the hope is that it goes well, but then
you note in the jacket that the book is especially tailored to be read while incarcerated.
Yeah, I think it's ideal for the incarcerated. Yeah, I think it's great for that. I mean, that would be, if I could get, I would love to. I don't know if it would make it past the whatever. Maybe I don't know if it's like accessible prison reading or not.
That's every writer's dream. You literally got a captive audience there. Although if in prison they don't like your book and they say I'd rather just sit in my cell and do nothing than read your book, that's a review you got to be worried about.
Yeah, that's a hard one to live with. But I feel like, it might go over all right.
I think it's going to be a big hit behind bars.
Do you know what the biggest, I don't think I mentioned this in the book, but the most popular TV show at Sing Sing 2.5 Men.
Really?
A bit of trivia. Yeah, just to give you a sense of where these guys are coming from. You would think like, rapes and murders are going to be in, Law and Order, CSI or something.
Burn Notice.
No. Yeah. It's 2.5 Men. That's the only show, because they can only watch things that everyone agrees on. So the only thing.
So that's the common denominator there, that they can all also.
They like sports, and 2.5 Men is the only thing they that's a good show. Leave that on.
So
I'll stab you.
So if I were to be incarcerated and to be the one guy that suggests that maybe there's other shows on besides 2.5 Men, I would ruin the consensus and
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're into Smash now or something. I don't know. Yeah.
I want to talk to you about the Dave Hill furnace that we referred to previously. You
Like
are,
that name.
you indeed you are a man of simultaneously old media, new media, and maybe kind of middle-aged media.
Yeah.
That you do a stage show, which is a medium dating back to ancient Greece, if not
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
frequently
To pre-verbal times.
exactly you're frequently heard on the radio on shows such as This American Life, and also you tweet, you keep a Tumblr blog, you have a podcast. Ha, do you feel a need to, as a man trying to keep up a comedy machine these days, to throw yourself into to all the new media that comes along? It's interesting because your personality does in fact adapt very well on be it a podcast or a Tumblr or Twitter or
Oh,
as well as your
thank you.
stage show. Is it exhausting? How do you pick your battles here?
Well, to answer your question, I mean, I genuinely enjoy Twitter, and I think it's a good place to sort of just get rid of errant thoughts and things like that. And I've actually, like, I think Twitter is good because there's people can't control like what they're putting out. You know, it's like these little drips of people's personalities. I think people can't, like a Facebook profile. I mean, you can like present this thing that you
Yeah.
want to be, or you want people to think you are. But with Twitter, I think eventually it's like if you put it all together, you kind of have a sense of what someone's like. So people have met through that are kind of like, then in a good way, just kind of like, oh yeah, like you can sort of hit the ground running, meet someone, they're kind of what you expect.
Do you feel an obligation though to keep? It could be.
Oh,
I'll go like a 3 day stretch where I haven't had a good tweet come to me, and then I start feeling guilty and anxious that my Twitter people out there, I'm walking away from this Twitter empire I've built that has absolutely no meaning or anything to me. But it's the do you feel your Twitter sometimes is the cart and you are the horse?
it varies, because sometimes, I mean, I wish I had more restraint with it, because sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish I could just do it once a day or something, but I have this impulse to do it more, and then there's part of me that wants to destroy social media. So when I do things like, but then, when Kim Jong-il died, I tweeted about my relationship with him, like nonstop for 4 days, and and I did the same thing when Casey Anthony wasn't sent to prison for and so but my idea with it is to bombard, the whole like clogging a toilet or something, but the fun of it is like with the Kim Jong-il thing, it's like it's so polarizing. I got so many followers in that time, like thousands more new ones, but I lost thousands at the same time, and which was just as gratifying to me. I kind of came out even in the end, but it was just like it's just kind of tickling to upset people, I guess.
You talk about I've been caught in this exact conundrum now for 3 years that I'm in a place where it's physically impossible for my Twitter following to grow or shrink, because it's half Idol fans, because I wrote about American Idol a long time, and and half the general public. So when I tweet about Idol, I get 100 people drop me who don't care about Idol. When I tweet about anything else, I get I get 100 idol fans drop me.
That doesn't sound
And an equal number comes back. But I'm actually I think science should study my Twitter, because it is in this place where it cannot grow or shrink. But it will be the same. If you check back 2 years from now, I'll have the exact same number of followers as I have today.
No, I bet it'll grow.
It can't, because to the extent it grows, idol fans will drop me, and they will drop me in equal numbers to my new fan, to the new fans who come. Fans,
yeah,
the fans of my tweets.
Yeah, because you're not aside from the coverage of American Idol, I don't think American Idol and I think of you. They're two very different things. I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah, no, I occupy worlds that have little crossover. You have on your book as an author, one can only look in envy at the incredible collection of advanced praise and blurbs you have on your book. You've got John Hodgman, Dick Cavett, Malcolm Gladwell, Ira Glass, Janine Garofalo, Sandra Bernhard, Andy Rickert, and the very great Chris Elliott on there. You have several of my idols on
yeah, me too.
That page. It's asking people for quotes. For me that was almost maybe the hardest part about the whole process. Was that a challenge for you, or was it fun, or did you?
Most of the people, I only asked 3 other people aside from the people on that book. One of them said, yeah, as a friend, and said yes, but then never got around to it, which I'm told that, as par for the course.
Is remarkable that's the only one that happened. That's generally the rule, rather than.
Yeah. But, it was surprising. There were 2 people I asked that I was sort of like, I don't know if I should ask them, because I didn't know them well enough that I felt like, yeah, it's totally. But everyone else, everyone asked for blurbs, I was friendly with. So
with the one who didn't deliver, is it awkward when you see him? Is there something sort of hanging over your relationship?
No, it's awkward with the person that said no. I've seen her a couple times, and I'm like, fuck you.
What was her reason for saying no?
Well, it's blurbed out, but in her, she has said this many times before and said it like publicly, and I was just unaware of that. So when she said it to me, I was just like, "What? Just fucking do it."
Yeah.
And
she has an actual no blurb policy.
Yeah. I mean, I think that happens with sort of the usual suspects that, just like everyone asks them. I think a lot of people that date giving me blurbs are people that, everyone, I think probably everyone who writes a book probably asks Ira Glass to give a blurb, but
it's hard to put it that having a no blurb policy, that to have a no it's hard to make a case that you can have a no blurb policy and not be kind of an a-hole.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like, it's over here. But then I get it, because now that I'm thinking about it, I had another friend, like a good friend, say no, and his reason is because he said no to all these people, and he's like, and then if I give a blurb to you, and I get all these other people mad at me.
It's not a problem. It's certainly not a problem I have being asked too much for blurbs, but it does sound like kind of. When you say it, it does sound sort of like I have a policy against no. I can't have any servants in the house from Central America because 2 of them stole from me, which
shake hands with anybody.
Exactly, which being stolen, having your servants steal from you. Yes, I suppose it's a real problem, but there's no way to say that without once you say that, the rest of your life, people will look at you like there's no. But can we talk about one who did blurb you? This is
Sure.
the question, because one of my true heroes, who I know has done a lot of work with you, Mr. Dick Cavett.
Yeah.
So he's been in your show a lot. He's how'd you develop a relationship with Dick Cavett?
We always used to bump into each other at the Tavern on the Green.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking over at a lane. Oh no.
You were both lunching with George Plimpton.
Yeah, and he would always pop by the table. So no, I met him. You know who Joe Franklin is, right?
Yes, I do.
Joe Franklin, a
New
talk
York.
show legend. New York legend.
Yeah.
He's in The Aristocrat. So Joe Franklin, his show was on cable when I was growing up in Cleveland. So his phone number was listed in his office. So I just called him one day, and I became friends with him. And then he mentioned that he had Dick Cavett on his radio show, and then so I was like, oh, I want to have him on my Fatal Explosion show at UCB, and then so I tracked him down, and then it took like a year of just asking his assistant like over and over, and I would ask like assuming it was a no, just something I would do for the hell of it, just like, oh, I'll ask Dick Cavett. And then I remember the first time he did it, I had emailed, and I was like, oh, I'm never going to hear back anyway. And then I had already gotten Rufus Wainwright to be the guest on the show, which is awesome on its own. And then it was like Friday, like 5:00, and I had saved like his Dick Cavett's like office number, his assistant's number, in my phone. And the phone comes up, Cavett. I'm like, oh my God, no way. And she's like, yeah, he wants to do the show. And then I was almost like, what? I can't have Dick Cavett and Rufus Wainwright in that little basement theater at the same time. And I was like, wait, of course I have to do that. So he did it, and then I had him do it. He's done my live show like 3 or 4 times, I think, like more than anybody else. And then,
do you hang out with him outside of off stage, or?
No, I wish, I would love to be. The dream would be like, oh, like we have dinner every Sunday or whatever. But I've been to his house.
Really?
I went to his house to he was on my podcast, so I recorded it over his house. And like he lives like whatever you're picturing is exactly what. I mean, it's just like kind of old New York apartment overlooking Central Park.
He had the incredible. I mean, his show is so incredible because he had the fortune to be this incredibly urbane wit who could talk to people so easily and come along at the exact weirdest moment in the history of entertainment. So those shows are just such a. It's like he was the perfect person to be able to just sort of dryly sit back and take in just the craziest things that came through that show. It's incredible. Yeah,
and a mixture of guests that just doesn't happen anymore. Like it would be like the Smothers Brothers after their show was canceled, and then like a dietitian and a senator
and David Bowie in full costume.
Yeah, just like a ridiculous mix of people, and it totally worked. And like it's funny, I was talking to him, and I was like, why? First of all, I love and they weren't like these scripted interviews where it's like, oh, have you been on vacation in Germany and something weird happened recently? And teeing up stories that are like prepared and stuff. So it's like none of that. It's just like there's awkward pauses. You have Groucho remarks like saying these weird misogynist.
That's a fantastic one.
Like it's crazy. It's just weird, and and you have comedians on who are not, they're not doing bits at all. They're just kind of hanging out and sometimes being very serious, and people getting Norman Mailer and God, why am I blanking on his name?
Well, he always dryly sort of notes like how bizarre this is or how insanely racist someone's being or something like that. He never sort of puts people in their place or anything, but it's always he always points it always takes it in, and it's a great
Yeah, he sort of just gives them the rope to hang themselves if they want, but he doesn't string them up himself. But it's yeah, it's so good. And I was asking him, like, why can't there be anything like this anymore? And he's like, oh, he's like, they always say, the people get what they want, but but he said, I think the people just get what they get.
Yeah.
It's just ultimately decided by some random television people or whatever who don't, most of them don't know anything any more than anyone else. They just like, oh, people want this or that. They don't, no one knows anything.
I would say just on a mass level that a talk show host sort of as urbane and witty to be on network television now, it's almost I mean, it's unthinkable. You couldn't. It would be like a Martian coming down and landing. We just the culture just would not know how to process that.
No, but I mean, but at the same time, I think it could work, but because it's about like, take like Nirvana as an example of like, well, they came along. I remember hearing like Nirvana's first album, and it would be unconscionable to be like, oh, these guys are going to be the biggest band in the world for a little while at any point. Like, no way. And then it happened, and it's like, I think it's, it just kind of like, people can, appreciate things, but I think usually they're just not given a chance, and most stuff is just like, it's like the equivalent of like baby mobiles for adults, just like stupid colors and just dumbest shit, just to occupy like wallpaper.
I think you're very generous with the public to think that they can appreciate things. The subtitle of this podcast that you're on today, this is a podcast about the decline of civilization, and my basic theory is that we've reduced our world from we used to be able to read articles, and then we could read blog posts, we could read books, and then we could read articles, and then we could read blog posts, and now we can manage to barely get through a tweet, 140 characters, and within, I'd say, 3 years, people are not going to be able to understand anything bigger than an emoticon. That basically.
I'm with you on that. I mean, it's part of me. This is like maybe a crazy conspiracy theory, but I do think all of it is headed towards like reducing us to like a pre-verbal society.
Yeah, smiley face, sad face, wink. That will be our language.
Because if you think about it, like now, it's like, oh, everyone's writing and communicating now, but then the language is completely destroyed. It's like, oh, we're not going to use any punctuation or capitalization, and now all these new words are made up and whatever, and then then it's like get down to 140 characters. No, I'm totally with you.
And yet,
there is, but maybe like they say we use a third of our brain. Like maybe there's potential there to go in the other way, but probably not.
Yeah. And yet, the culture preserves a space for a Dave Hill to blossom and to thrive and to find audiences across the mediums, as we said, from old media to new. Dave, we have to let you go now, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The new book is Tasteful Nudes and Other Misguided Attempts at Personal Growth and Validation, available next week at your finer bookstore or online book dispensary. And we should all where should we send people? What's your Chiron to your website, to your Twitter? Where should people?
Yeah, they can go to my website, davesonline.com, and if you go there, that'll spin you out into anywhere else, Twitter, my Amazon page, whatever.
A man with many great things going on. I love all of them, and looking forward to your great success with this book and many more to come, Dave. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Take care.
Yep, you too.
Bye-bye. So there it was. That's our podcast for the week. I told you it was going to be a good one, didn't I? No, I'm not psychic. Well, yes, I might be psychic, but that was not psychic powers acting that told me that. I had inside knowledge. I had sources at Rushfield Babylon Podcast HQ who tipped me off that there were good things in store for our audience, and they were right. They proved that. Thank you to our guests, Michelle McNamara and Dave Hill. A delight to talk with them both. And thank you for joining us. This could not have been you listening to us without you. As we say, we'll be blogging all the week around over at rushfieldbabylon.com. Stop by and join us. Send an email if you're so inspired. If you have anything to say, to tell me what we should fix about this show. Richard Rushfield at gmail.com will work for you. And also, if you like the show, maybe you want to go to iTunes and leave a comment, a review on the Rushfield Babylon iTunes page. We're a new podcast, just pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps here. So these reviews, having some reviews up there wouldn't hurt. And love to hear from you. If you didn't like the show, well, then you probably didn't listen to it for an hour plus, so you're not hearing these words. So nuts to you. That's what I say. Absent former listener. Thanks so much. We're going to be back next week with another fantastic podcast at the end of the world.